Okay, welcome back to another episode of Banking Without Borders. Today we're doing our September monthly recap, and we have a lot to discuss, people. There's a lot happening. So Revolut is entering the AI agent space, and they're aiming to automate areas like sales, customer service, and even financial assistance. We wanted to discuss the potential ramifications of AI and banking, because I'm not sure if people really want to be talking to a computer about their bank accounts or trying to resolve incidents of fraud with a chatbot voice that's like entirely computer generated. Revolut also once again recorded the highest number of fraud and scam complaints that were escalated to the FOS, beating every other bank. And they did this back in 2023. So things haven't really improved, even though ironically, they've probably implemented a lot of AI since then to try and help detect fraud. Also, Revolut has a new futuristic office, so we're going to react to that. And we'll also react to Starling Bank's rebrand, or should I just say Starling, because they've dropped the bank part. We'll also discuss this acquisition of Curve by Lloyds, which is really hotting up. It's actually becoming a bit of a soap opera, so get your popcorn out. But first, Jan, I thought Revolut already had a ton of AI. At least that's the impression I get when I contact customer support, but it would appear that this is just the beginning.
Yeah, Johnny, exciting news from Revolut here. So they set up a dedicated AI department, and they're planning to build AI call center agents mainly, but also other AI-based services, which could be quite interesting. So chances are, if you're reaching out to Revolut in the future, you might be talking to a computer instead of a real human. I mean, it comes with pros and cons, right? It's very clear that the availability of these services is going to be drastically improved. I'm not sure if you've tried to reach out to Revolut at some point in the past. At least for me, with a standard account, it always takes quite some time to be actually connected to a human. And that would be, obviously fixed with that. The question, however, is, how good are these services going to be? Right? How you've probably, chatted with ChatGPT quite some time. I do that regularly, even on a daily basis. And I must say, while it's good most of the time, there are cases where I would prefer a human interaction personally.
Especially when you look at the statistics, it's just fact that AI bots, large language models, they hallucinate. Like 10% of the time, they don't know if the answer they're giving you is correct. And the same will apply for a chatbot. And we're talking about finance. We're talking about banking products, Jan. It needs to be accurate.
Yeah, it needs to be very accurate. Super important. What's also going to be interesting is that most of these AI bots are going to be call center agents, right? So I guess Revolut, that would be the logical thing to do. They'd probably be launching a phone service later on this year or maybe next year. So you'd be able to reach out to someone at Revolut, some computer at Revolut, through your phone. How that's gonna work in practice, I don't know. We'll see. But I've personally never interacted with an AI call center agent that has really convinced me. It's typically you recognize it.
Have you had a back and forth conversation though, or have you had like an automated one where?
Yeah, I had.
Really, where it was talking and you would. Returning, you were responding, and then it was responding live?
Yeah, I had that. There was a few sales calls. Actually happens quite regularly. I must be on some phone list, but people call me, typically, AI chatbots, and then they're trying to sell me something. And it sounds quite okay at first, right? A little bit robotic, but that's not the issue. The tone of voice is definitely not the issue here. But whenever I say something, they stop immediately. At least that's what I've experienced personally. And then they obviously let me talk, but it sounds, you feel it's a computer. It's okay, right? It gets the job done, but now imagine you have an issue with your bank you really need to resolve. Maybe you need to transfer some money today. I don't know, maybe your account is frozen, whatever is the issue. And then you're stuck with a computer. I'm not sure what to think about that personally.
Yeah, personally, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I think there are some definite red flags, particularly where we are at the moment in like an AI infancy. Things are still quite early on. Things aren't actually performing that well. We're seeing hallucinations from ChatGPT, from Claude, from various LLMs. We're seeing a lot of problems emerging. AI just isn't as sophisticated as I think people initially expected it to be at this stage. So you're going to implement unsophisticated, in my opinion at least, AI into a banking infrastructure ecosystem, which is required to help customers live who have problems with their money, the most important thing to most people on this planet. I cannot see that going well. It is frightening. What could possibly be frightening as well, Jan? I don't know what you think about this. Could you see them implementing it into a sales platform of some sort? So you could get a call from a Revolut AI chatbot that would be like, hey, I've seen how much money you're like transferring internationally. I think the premium plan would be better to help you save money. Like, do you think they would go that far?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, as I've mentioned earlier, I've had AIs reaching out to me on the phone trying to sell me stuff, and I could see that happening here as well.
That's what triggered me. That's what made me think, I wonder if Revolut would do the same thing.
I'm pretty sure they would. I mean, it's logical, and to be honest, I don't think I would have any issue with that. Right? If there's a real case behind it, you know, let's say someone would call me and say, "Hey, Jan, I've noticed you've been spending quite a lot of money abroad, right? You paid us, I don't know, $100 in fees over the last few months. If you'd switch your plan, you'd save half of that." Then I'd be enticed to do that, and I would have no issue with that. I'd actually appreciate the call, but obviously, like the reasoning needs to be there.
It sounds logical. What you've just described to me sounds fair, but I think some people would have a hard time with just the transparency side of being told that this artificial intelligence being large language model is analyzing my financial data, coming to a decision that I need to be sold a product that will save me money, which I think is a good thing in some degree. But I think some people will have a problem with that.
For sure.
I think some people will find that hard to accept.
Yeah. Now imagine it starts to hallucinate, and the data makes up some weird data, tells you the premium plan is the best plan for your personal needs, and then it turns out not to be the case. I mean, I can see that happening.
Yeah, me too. Like, you know, like Revolut bots phoning like 16-year-old account users using like teen accounts, offering to sell them on like to so they can access Tinder Gold.
Tinder Gold, yeah.
The Tinder Gold for the 16-year-old. You can just see that happening because it's going to be at such a large scale that it's just inevitable that there'll be hallucinations and problems, which is the frightening thing, because Revolut are looking at scale, like products that are scalable. That's how Revolut's business model has been built, around scalability and around being cost effective. And that's why AI to them is so appealing. They're going to want to scale this into every avenue of Revolut that they have, particularly when they have 60 million customers to try and handle. But at that scale, you're guaranteeing that there's going to be problems. If we jump across to Klarna now, we want to talk about the IPO, but I just want to say, like, Klarna, Jan, I don't know if you remember this, but they reduced their headcount, I think in 2023 from 3,800, I believe, to 3,100, around the 3,000 mark. How do you think that they were able to fire that many employees?
Yeah, probably people working in customer relations. And then, they implemented the AI chatbot, but complaint sort, so they had to rehire some of this stuff. I don't know if that's going to happen to Revolut. I mean, do they have a phone service in place right now? I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't correct you early on, but they do. They have the Ultra plan that has the priority customer support. And I think, I'm just going to jump on the Revolut website quickly, but I believe you can get in-app call for Premium, Metal, and Ultra with Revolut. And Klarna, I think you need to look at Klarna, possibly because it was 2023 and LLMs weren't as well equipped or as advanced as they are now, so that's why it didn't work so successfully. But I don't think it really matters how good these chatbots are. I think people just want to interact with a human being. Now, possibly they'll get it to the point where it will be like talking to a human, but they'll have to be transparent about it and tell you that it's a chatbot or an AI. They have to. I'm sure there'll be some legislation involved. And so I think people will just switch off immediately. When it comes to stuff like this, I think one of the problems Klarna faced is people just want to speak to a human. The reason they rolled this back and the reason Klarna tried to desperately beg their employees to come back was because their Trustpilot was just inundated with complaints about poor customer service. I think that's going to be a potential problem for Revolut. And I think they've just started to build up their Trustpilot. They're just starting to look like things are doing better in terms of customer service. You know, the kind of brand feeling that people get with Revolut, I think it is improving, but I don't know. I can see this having problems for sure. Regarding Klarna though, Jan, let's just talk about this quickly, because this IPO that they recently did this month, I don't know if anyone's watching this, if anyone FOMO'd into it, because there was a slight uptick. What's really interesting about this one is the fact that so many of their employees are now essentially millionaires.
Yeah, about 40 current and former employees that they actually call Klarnaut now hold shares worth at least $1 million.
I want to talk about this Klarnauts, this thing, this name. This like corporate weird like tribal naming thing has got me thinking, right? So Klarnauts. So let's look at other company names, for example. Like if you go to work for Slack, are you called a slacker?
I don't know. Are you?
Surely not.
Maybe.
Right? And what about if you go to work for OnlyFans? Do they call you Only Fannies? Maybe.
Good question, yeah.
But I find this whole corporate tribal naming thing like Klarna to be so strange.
It's ridiculous.
What's interesting, Jan, is that the CEO isn't selling any of his shares, whereas some of the lower grade corporate like executives, like the CMO, I think maybe even the COO, CMO, and the Chief Product Officer, CPO. Sorry about the ridiculous acronyms. But these people are offloading or selling some of their shares, whereas the CEO, whose name I cannot pronounce, and the CTO are holding onto their shares, which signals confidence.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a good sign for investors, for sure. I mean, and that's what you want if you're investing into a company, especially fast-growing fintech startup. You want CEOs that are fully committed to the mission.
Do you plan on investing? Would you, without giving financial advice, would you invest in Klarna?
No, not really. To be honest, I made it a habit to at least invest into companies that are profitable. That's just what I do. And to be honest, with their buy now pay later business model, I know they're transitioning towards becoming a neobank right now, but they're still heavily dependent on their buy now pay later business model. That comes with some issues, right? Some profitability issues. So I'm not sure if they can even reach the ambitious goals they set themselves. And I'd rather not invest personally, but I know many people that are thinking otherwise, and maybe it's a good investment. Time will tell.
I'm not really sure how I feel. There's a few things to unpack here. Like if we just look at like the macroeconomic environment right now, the wider kind of global economy seems to be doing okay, although the consumer sentiment is a little bit downbeat. People aren't really that happy to be spending large amounts of money at the moment. Cost of living is increasing. There's a lot of inflation around the world, so people are spending less. If Klarna can survive an economic downturn, if things get tough and Klarna can see it through, I think if you look at their customer base, millions and millions of people all around the world that they can leverage, that they can utilize and try and push towards a neobank Revolut style system, I think if they can achieve that, if they can get through the worst parts of the global economy right now, and we can see a bit of a boom maybe as a result of generative AI, maybe we'll see productivity go through the roof. You could see a company like Klarna riding that wave, particularly given the amount of customers that they have around the world, Jan. They could be a Revolut. You said yourself they're sort of shifting to this neobank system. Well, why can't they just copy the Revolut playbook and leverage their customers that they currently have to build a global super app? This is all just hypotheticals, but they do have a large customer base. They do have access to large amounts of people, so they could leverage that. If they can get banking licenses around the world as well, that could be really, really promising. Right now, as it stands though, I would not invest. This is not financial advice, but I would personally not invest in Klarna. There are a couple of reasons for that Jan explained, not being profitable. I'd be looking towards the future outlook of Klarna. I'd be waiting maybe another 6 months to a year to see what comes after quarterly results. There's also the fact that, Jan, a large amount of their current shareholders who became millionaires after the IPO cannot sell their shares until March, which is a big thing to know if you're thinking about investing in Klarna, right? Because come March, if they start offloading their shares, that share price is going to drop massively. But, and you can see this, you can see the buying and selling on platforms like tradingview.com. If you see there isn't all of a sudden a massive uptick in selling and people aren't offloading shares in March, April, May, in fact, the price is still rising, you could probably say, wow, their employees seem confident. Well, these are employees that will have access to financials. We'll be able to see revenue, profit. They'll know what's happening inside the company, and that could be a good indication of what's happening at Klarna. Personally, I'm going to wait for the reasons I said regarding like becoming a super app and leveraging all those customers. But in the short term, I think it's wise to wait.
Curve, Johnny. Lloyds wants to acquire Curve, and it seems like the Curve shareholders aren't really happy about it, which I fully understand. I believe they've raised about £250 million over the last few years, and Curve is offering about £120 million, which is obviously basically half of what they've raised. So investors are essentially seeing maybe just a fraction of what they've invested into the company. Yeah,
there's some strange things happening over at Curve. It felt like this Lloyds transaction was going to go through really quickly. It was imminent, and then all of a sudden it stalled because it turns out that external investors in Curve, companies like IDC Ventures, who have sent loads of money to Curve to try and build their brand, are saying, no, we do not want you to sell this for 120 million or whatever it is.
It's understandable.
We don't want you to sell that. And they're saying, Jan, that Curve aren't being, or the people who work in like the corporate executives at Curve, like Lord Stanley Fink, like the CEO, they're not being apparently transparent about the details of the transaction either.
And it goes this far that they're actually threatening litigation now. Yeah, obviously that opens up the question, does Lloyds really want to put themselves into a position where they are acquiring a technology company that's, definitely not making money, maybe not being that useful after all nowadays, and then potentially also facing a lengthy lawsuit.
I think the CEO and Lord Stanley Fink, the chairman of the board, want to shift this brand. I think they probably think it's a bit of a dead duck. They want to try and get rid of it, and they're grateful that Curve are coming in and offering 120 million. Sorry, Lloyds are coming in and offering that money. Sorry. But what's happening is, like IDC, the external investors aren't happy about it, and you're seeing this clash of these two entities. This article is a few weeks old now, but still nothing has been confirmed yet whether Lloyds will buy it. And I think Jan is right to ask the question. I think Lloyds will now be thinking, do we want to get involved in this brand that have potential outstanding legal problems? Could you not maybe build Curve for 150 million? Could you not do this yourself, Lloyds?
That's a good question.
Instead of taking the risk?
Doesn't look that extraordinary to me personally, but again, I'm not a tech expert. I don't know the technology behind it really well. Time will tell. Johnny, while we're talking about fintech startups, who recently rebranded? Starling Bank. So they came up with an all-new design, new logo, color palette, and also redesigned cards. What do you think about that?
I've got a few things I've been thinking about over the last couple of weeks. I mean, initially when I looked at it, Jan, I was like, it kind of looks like a comic book drawing. I think maybe they dropped the bank part because people genuinely didn't actually believe they were a bank. I don't mean that in a serious way, but like really, like they don't have a credit card, they don't have loans, they're certainly like missing some banking elements, and I wonder if they dropped bank as well because they felt like, well, it doesn't necessarily apply to us.
Are they licensed at all in the UK?
They are licensed, my friend.
Okay.
yeah, it's a bit of a stretch for me to say something like that, but you know what? There are some products that they're missing. And then there's, I don't know, little things like this announcement, right? This brand refresh page. It's like category icons and new fonts. Like this is the kind of announcement that gets graphic designers like horny, excuse my French, like gets them excited, but no one really cares about new app icons. We care about new banking products or benefits like rewards on our spending. Like Starling still don't have like a direct cashback reward system. You have to go to a third-party app like Tail. So it's really quite difficult to set up benefits and rewards for your spending inside the Starling app. Their easy access savings account, Jan, is still not that competitive. It's 3.75%. I think the best right now is 4.5, which is Chase UK. We'll talk about more on that at the end of the episode. So what I'm saying is like new app icons, new categories. Like seriously, like this rebrand looks more like an attempt to stay current, to look innovative, to look like they're making progress.
But hey, you know what their business account holders can now get? An aubergine colored debit card. I mean, I didn't know aubergine was a color before I read Starling's announcement. Not sure what you think about that, but I don't know, Johnny.
A deep dark purple.
Yeah, it's purple. It's not aubergine colored, but hey, aubergine sounds better. All right.
And there's this electric teal brand color. Did you see that? Like to me, that sounds more like a vaping flavor.
Yeah, good point.
Like it doesn't scream like banking branding. It just, to me, this seems like a step backwards. I wish they could have stuck with the bird. Like why? Like Lloyds have a horse. Why couldn't they stick with the bird and like play off the Starling bird? I thought that was fantastic.
I'm not a designer. You're also not a designer, Johnny. So yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe from a design perspective, this is actually really clever and really good. I don't know.
Jan, the voice of reason there. I really appreciate that, mate. I really do. Let's look at this fraud list. Okay, so Starling Bank, something they're doing well is they're not the most complained about bank. So that's really, really promising. But Revolut are.
Basically, Revolut customers, they've registered about 3,000 APP fraud complaints to the Financial Ombudsman Service. Johnny, you probably know better about that than me. What are APP complaints? So APP stands for Authorized Push Payments. That's basically, basically all kinds of payments where someone motivates the victim to send money independently. So the victim actually authorizes these transactions. Could be something like a dating scam or romance scam, I believe that's how they're called. Basically, most banks, they do reimburse these payments. I believe starting 2025, they're actually required to do that in the UK. I'm not sure what's the exact deadline there, but it's Revolut apparently hasn't been refunding some of these, and that's why 3,000 people complained with the ombudsman service.
In some ways it's like, well, getting lots and lots of complaints could also be determined by the number of users you have. So obviously banks with large amounts of users will get large amounts or are more likely to get more complaints. But how many people are really using Revolut as their main banking service in the UK, given that they're not fully licensed yet? I know they've got loads of customers, but I still don't think that argument stands with Revolut. I find it strange because Revolut certainly isn't the most used bank in the UK. I know Barclays were on this list. Barclays are very popular here, so that's a good example of that. But Revolut.
Yeah, you know what? I thought actually could be the amount of customers they have, right? If you have more customers, obviously you're gonna get more complaints. But then I looked at their website and compared it with Starling's website, and you know what Starling has, what Revolut doesn't have? A hotline that you can call if you feel that your payment request feels a little off. If you're suspecting a scam, you can call Starling.
That's good.
And they would then stop the payment immediately. And Revolut doesn't seem to have that. They have a form you need to fill out, but forms take some time to answer them. The fraud is then being reported, but I don't know how successful they would be in stopping the payment before it actually goes out.
Yeah. There's a really tightrope, isn't it, to try and walk across, because on one side they want to have things in place that are going to stop these transactions from happening. But on the flip side of the tightrope is the fact that they don't want to freeze accounts. They don't want to freeze transactions of people that are just using their accounts, because that in itself can be like a customer service optic nightmare, which is something that Revolut has already had problems with. So I imagine they're having to walk this tightrope of trying to have like really strong, robust fraud system, detection systems in place, but without making mistakes and freezing people's accounts, for example.
But hey, soon you can call an AI and then explain them about your fraud. And hope that they'll stop the payment. I don't know how successful that will be, but it's an interesting perspective to look at. Exciting news. They revealed a new global headquarters, and I'm not British, but it's located in the Canary Wharf, and it looks tremendous. The Canary Wharf. Yeah, I believe that's London's most exclusive area, right? That's where all the banks are placed.
Mm-hmm.
From an architectural perspective, I'm not an architect. Again, but I think it looks stunning, honestly. Gives me some Apple vibes, personally. Tremendous.
It looks futuristic. It's what you envisage a company like Revolut or just Revolut would have as a building.
Now imagine being one of the founding members and walking through that door, right? Every day, potentially. That must be an incredible feeling. Honestly.
Yeah, what's interesting is that they are a remote, hybrid-based organization. I think they celebrate the fact that a lot of their roles are still remote. At least that's what I believe to be true. I think that's true. But they've got this really fancy, really beautiful office space that must have cost hundreds of thousands. And for an organization that quite clearly needs to invest in growth, invest in marketing, invest in referral bonuses that they love to send to us, it does seem like a big investment, right, for office space, which I don't know, right, in terms of like futuristic capitalism and organization and business, it doesn't seem like it's necessarily the best place to invest.
Yeah, good point. But if it motivates more remote people to come to the office on a regular basis, I mean, maybe there's an increase in productivity from that as well. I don't know personally, Johnny. Time will tell. But yeah, speaking of investments, they actually announced that they're going to invest about 10 billion pounds, 13 billion US dollars roughly, globally or across the next 5 years. And $4 billion will be invested in the UK, 1.2 billion in France, and I believe 500 million or so in the US. The rest in other markets. And that will create apparently 10,000 new jobs worldwide. That's a good thing for sure. And that also shows that they're really, onto their mission of reaching, I believe it's 100 million customers by the end of the decade or so. Oh no, it's actually mid 2027. They're planning to reach these 100 million. So that's even more ambitious. Got to invest then.
I imagine if you invested $13 billion 15 to 20 years ago, how many employees would that be worth? To just create 10,000 jobs from $13 billion. Like, that is a crazy amount of money per employee or per job that you created. I don't think a huge amount of that investment will be going to creating jobs. And I'm not even sure if that's a number that's necessarily worth celebrating. It is a good thing, of course. But is it a way of being like, well, jobs are at risk as a result of us building like AI chatbots. So here, look, don't worry, we are still building out our employee base as well. And possibly a lot of those jobs will go towards like fraud detection, customer protection roles, like security roles.
Yep.
But that was my initial thought, Jan. I was like, wow, just 10,000 jobs from a $13 billion worth of investment.
I mean, who really cares? If it's actually 5,000 jobs even, that's still a success. They're not in a charity business. They're a for-profit company.
Sure.
So their target is obviously to invest their money in a way that it brings the most return on investment. They're not in the market of creating jobs. It's a positive side effect that society profits on, of course, but it's not their main objective here.
I think it's just like an indication of where we are at the moment in 2025, where human resources, like human jobs, they're not necessarily the first thing that gets created when investments are made and businesses grow. Whereas before, businesses, organizations were entirely run by the people that worked for them. So if you wanted to grow, you needed to grow your employee base. Do you want to talk about the EU interest rates quickly?
Yeah, let me do that. So no news there. Interest rates stayed about the same, mostly. We'll display them on the screen right now. And if you're listening to this, it's about 2%. And we're looking at neobanks that are available in different markets. So we got Bank, N26, Trade Republic, Klarna, Revolut. More or less 2%, depending on where you're exactly based.
Yeah, so in the UK, a few things have been happening. The Chase Saver, Chase UK savings account was reduced from 4.75% to 4.5%. And the Chase Saver was the best savings account in the UK, but that's changed now. The best account is now Oxbury Bank with this 180-day notice base rate tracker account. And if you don't feel comfortable with that amount of time, well, Oxbury Bank also have this 120-day notice account, which is only 0.1% less, which is probably quite generous considering you get an extra 60 days. But the minimum deposit on that account is £10,000. Whereas the 180-day notice is £1,000. There are a couple of one-year fixes which are quite interesting. OakNorth Bank have a fix at 4.45%, and JN Bank have a fix at 4.43%. But generally speaking, these rates aren't really that compelling when you look at the bigger picture, like inflation, for example, which in the UK right now is running at about 3.8%. But we hope you enjoyed today's video. Let us know in the comments section if you have any thoughts on any of the topics we discussed. Like, go have a look at Starling's rebrand. Let us know what you think. If you are a Starling customer, let us know what you think. They did change the app slightly, Jan, which could be quite interesting. Some people might like the new layout, the new design. So do let us know in the comments section. If you have any funny stories as well of interactions with AI chatbots, I'd love to hear from you. Like, what are your thoughts on AI chatbots in banking? Like a real person, not a real person, but like a live voice talking to you when you're trying to say like, hey, someone's trying to steal my money, and there's this voice going, it's okay, hold for a moment and I will help you. Like, would that annoy you? Maybe that voice would. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, enjoyed listening to the podcast, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please do give us a like, rate us, subscribe. Just these are little things that you can do to help support Jan and I and help grow and help us develop this channel.
Thanks everyone for listening. It's been a pleasure as always. Looking forward to the next episode.